Good morning, friends. Today we are going to talk about a very important topic, musculature of hip and thigh region. So whenever we are going to start a hip and thigh region, there are too many muscles, many bones are there, and joints are there on which body is dependent for walking, sitting, and every other specific movement of lower limb. So let's start the topic. In this topic, we are going to specifically talk about first the overview of the region, and then we are going to talk about the specific muscles. So this topic is going to be a long one, and you have to follow it and try to learn it also because many questions are going to come from this topic in exams. So first of all, what are the muscle compartments in hip and thigh region? So the hip and thigh region of body can be divided to following muscular compartment. You can see here ILIOPSOAS, which covers about the iliac region, and the muscles will be psoas major and psoas minor. Then there is gluteal region, especially present on the posterior side, having muscle, specifically gluteus maximus, medius, and minimus. Then anterior thigh, there will be vastus group of muscles and a sartorius. When you can see this is sartorius. Then medial thigh, it will be having adductor group of muscles. Then there will be a posterior thigh, which is basically having the hamstring muscles. These are the five basic compartments which we have to talk about in this particular lecture. So first of all, talking about the iliopsoas compartment, it only has three muscles, as the name suggests: iliacus, psoas major, and psoas minor. The iliacus will cover the total area of iliac bone. I think everybody knows hip bone is typically divided into three parts: iliac, ischium, and pubis. This is pubis, this is ischium, and this is the bigger one, ear pinna like it will be the iliac. The muscle which is covering the total of the iliac bone will be the iliacus. We'll talk about origin and insertion and afterwards. Then there is psoas major. This particular muscle major means bigger in size and having the attachment on the vertebrae of lumbar region also and then there is psoas minor. This will be the smaller one, a small tweak of the muscle, which is present in this particular compartment. So basically, there are three muscles in iliopsoas compartment: iliacus, psoas major, and psoas minor. Remember the name at least. IPP is the code. Next, when we go see the gluteal compartment, it is again divided into three parts: superficial, intermediate, and deep. In the superficial compartment, there are basically two muscles: gluteus maximus, as the name suggests, this is the biggest one, and then TFL, that is tensor fascia lata. Gluteus maximus, you can see this is gluteus maximus covering whole of the posterior side of the hip. Then tensor fascia lata is a small, no, thin muscle which is in the whole length from the iliac point to the tip of the femur, lower end. Then there is intermediate compartment which is having only one muscle, gluteus medius. Medius means in between. The size is also in between the maximus and medius. Then there is a deeper one having too many muscles. First one is gluteus minimus, piriformis, obturatus internus. Obturatus internus covers the obturator foramen, so it is easier to remember. Then there are two gemelli. Gemelli means finger-like. Gemelli superior, gemelli inferior, and then quadratus femoris. This is quadratus femoris. So this whole part also take parts in the forming of diaphragm or perineum of the hip. Also, these muscles are going to help in. So again, just revise it. On the superficial, there are two: gluteus maximus and tensor fascia lata. Then in the intermediate, there is only one: gluteus medius. Then the deeper one, there are six muscles specifically: gluteus medius, piriformis, obturator, gemellus superior, gemellus inferior, and quadratus femoris. First of all, we have to remember the names of each muscle. Then in the anterior thigh region, again there are three compartments: superficial, intermediate, deep. In superficial compartment, there are two muscles: rectus femoris and sartorius. Rectus femoris is this one, the bigger muscle, and sartorius is also called as Taylor's muscle. This is the longest muscle of the body. Then in the intermediate compartment, there are three vastus. Vastus lateralis on lateral side, vastus intermedius on the middle, and vastus medialis on the medial side. This particular vastus medialis, you can see it is present on the medial side and covering or going on the upper end of the tibia region. And the deeper part, there is only one, that is the smaller one, that is articular chain. So anterior thigh is also divided into three parts: superficial, intermediate, and deep. And again, the same thing, you have to learn the names first of all as per compartment wise. In the medial thigh, there are two compartments only. Superficial one, that is adductor brevis, GRACILIS, PECTINEUS, and adductor longus. So two adductors are here, adductor brevis and adductor longus in superficial, and other two are GRACILIS and PECTINEUS. In the deeper one, there is obturator externus. Remember, we have studied obturator internus previously, and then there is one more adductor magnus. So in total, there are three adductors: adductor magnus, longus, and in superficial we have seen brevis. So that's why this particular group is also called as adductor group of muscles, because it helps in adduction. Then comes the posterior group. Again, there are two compartments. Superficial, you will find the bicep femoris, long head, and semitendinosus. And in the deeper side, it is bicep femoris, short head, and semimembranous. So this particular group will be also called as hamstring muscles. Remember the name: biceps longus, bicep femoris short head, semimembranosus, and semitendinosus. These have very specific insertion also, which we are going to talk in later part. Then you can see a cross section of this particular, all the muscles of especially thigh region. This is very important diagram which we have to study. First of all, you have to identify the bone, that's femur. Then you can see rectus femoris, anterior compartment we are talking about, sartorius, vastus medius, vastus lateralis, and vastus medialis. So this will be forming the anterior compartment. In the medial side, you see adductor longus, adductor magnus, and gracilis. This will be forming the medial compartment. In the posterior side, you see bicep femoris short head, semimembranosus, and semitendinosus. So this whole is the cross section of thigh. Again, I will say the compartment and names are really very important. Now coming towards the one by one muscle which we are going to study. The first one in this group is, these are not as per compartment, these are actually arranged in the alphabetical order. So you have to find in which particular group they are going to fall in. But the presentation is very nice, that's why we are continuing this. Adductor brevis, remember adductor compartment, body and inferior ramus of the pubis, insertion will be on pectineal line and proximal portion of linea aspera. You can see the nerve will be obturator nerve. The compartments of thigh are very specific for the nerve supply also. So the medial compartment, basically maximum number of muscles are going to get supply from obturator nerve only. So this is also of same compartment. So there will be obturator nerve. The action will be, as the name suggests, adduction of hip and flexion of hip from extended portion. This blue one is the dissected one of the adductor brevis. Next come adductor longus. This is the longest one. From the body of pubis inferior to the pubic crest, medial third of linea aspera of femur. Again, the nerve is same, obturator nerve, and again the action is in adduction of the hip. Next comes the biggest one, adductor magnus. Adductor magnus is a big muscle. Inferior ramus of pubis, ramus of ischium, and ischial tuberosity. Three origins. Insertion will be on gluteal tuberosity, linea aspera, medial supracondylar line, and adductor tubercle. Nerve supply will be basically obturator nerve also, but a part of tibial nerve is also going to come here. So this is a type of hybrid muscle. Hybrid muscles are those which are having two nerve supplies. Action will be adduction of hip, flexion of hip, and extension of hip. This colored one is the adductor magnus. Next come bicep femoris. Long head is coming from ischial tuberosity, and the short head will be from the linea aspera and lateral supracondylar line. Insertion will be on the lateral portion of the head of fibula. Remember, lateral portion of head of fibula. The tendon is split here by the lateral collateral ligament. Innervation, the long head will be from the tibial nerve and the short head will be from the common fibular nerve. Action will be extension of hip, flexion of knee, and external rotation of knee. All these things you have to make the tables in the compartment wise. Next comes the gluteus maximus. Gluteus maximus will be in the gluteal compartment. Maximus, so there will be bigger origin, posterior ilium, dorsal surface of sacrum and coccyx, sacrotuberous ligament. Insertion will be iliotibial tract, gluteal tuberosity. Nerve supply, very specifically remember here, inferior gluteal nerve and helps in the extension of hip, external rotation of hip, and abduction of hip. Next one is gluteus medius. External surface of ilium between the anterior and posterior gluteal lines. Lateral surface of greater trochanter of femur, where the insertion is going to happen. Superior gluteal nerve. Remember, the maximus goes from the inferior gluteal nerve, and the medius will be from the superior gluteal nerve. It helps in the internal rotation of hip and abduction of hip. This colored one is the gluteus medius. Next one is the smallest one of this group, that is gluteus minimus. Gluteus minimus originates from external surface of ilium between the anterior and inferior gluteal line. Insertion will be on greater trochanter of femur. It will be also supplied by superior gluteal nerve. Also helps in internal rotation of hip and abduction of hip. Next one is iliacus. Iliacus will be iliopsoas muscle group. The origin will be iliac crest, iliac fossa, ala or sacrum, anterior sacroiliac ligament. Insertion will be on lesser trochanter. Nerve supply will be femoral nerve. It helps in the hip flexion, external rotation of unloaded hip. Loaded and unloaded hip we have previously studied in the previous lecture. Internal rotation of loaded hip. Next one is gracilis. Gracilis is very thin muscle, just like a ribbon. It originates from the body and inferior ramus of pubis. Insertion is on the superior part of medial surface of tibia. Nerve supplies obturator nerve, and it helps in adduction of hip, flexion of knee, and internal rotation of knee. Next ones are gemelli, inferior gemelli. Remember, this was from the deep compartment of the gluteal region, originates from ischial tuberosity, medial surface of greater trochanter. The nerve supplies nerve to quadratus femoris, externally rotates the hip and pulls femoral hip head into the acetabulum. This small one is gemelli. Next is obturator externus. Obturator externus, it is external brim of the obturator foramen and obturator membrane. Insertion will be of trochanteric fossa of femur. Obturator nerve will be the nerve supply. It helps in the external rotation of hip and pulls femoral head into the acetabulum. Next one is obturator internus. Obturator internus originates from the pelvic surface of ilium and ischium, also from obturator membrane. It runs behind the ischial ramus, turns through the lesser sciatic notch and attached to the medial surface of greater trochanter. The nerve supplies nerve to internal obturator internus. Action will be externally rotating the hip, pulls the femoral head into the acetabulum. This also helps in the strengthening of the hip joint. Next muscle is pectineus. Pectineus originates from the superior ramus of pubis. Insertion is on the pectineal line of femur. Nerve supply will be femoral nerve, because this is a muscle of anterior compartment. So anterior compartment muscle basically have the supply from femoral nerve only. Adduction of hip, flexion of hip, and internal rotation of hip will be the action. Next is the piriformis. Piriformis originates from the anterior surface of second and fourth sacral segment, superior surface of sacral notch and sacrotuberous ligament. Insertion will be on the greater trochanter. Nerve supply will be from S1 and S2. It also helps in the external rotation of hip pulls femoral head into the acetabulum, again strengthening the joint. Next comes the psoas major. In the iliopsoas group, sides from the T12 to L5 will be the originating and transverse process of lumbar vertebrae. Insertion will be on dorsal trochanter. Innervation is from anterior MI of L1 to L3. Action is very important. Hip flexion, external rotation of unloaded hip, internal rotation of loaded hip, flexion of trunk, and lateral trunk flexion. So it also helps in the flexion of trunk region also, that is psoas major. Next one is the quadratus femoris of anterior thigh region. Sorry, of the hip region only. The lateral border of ischial tuberosity, quadrate tubercle on the intertrochanteric crest of femur will be its insertion point. Innervation will be the same name of muscle only, now to quadratus femoris. It helps in adduction of hip and external rotation of hip also. Next one is rectus femoris. Rectus femoris is of actually of anterior compartment of thigh. It originates from AIIS, that is anterior inferior iliac spine. Insertion of patellar tuberosity, femoral nerve, and hip flexion and knee extension will be its action. Next will be the talus muscle, that is sartorius. Sartorius arises from ASIS, that is anterior superior iliac spine. Insertion is on anteromedial surface of tibia. Nerve supply is same, that is femoral nerve. Action will be hip flexion, external rotation of unloaded hip, internal rotation of loaded hip. This will be the action of this particular unique muscle, that is sartorius. Next comes the muscle from the posterior side, semimembranosus and semitendinosus. The semimembranosus will originate from ischial tuberosity. Insertion will be on posterior portion of medial tibial condyle, reflex to form oblique popliteal ligament. The nerve supply will be all the posterior one basically are getting from the tibial nerve, extension of hip, flexion of knee. Remember these two especially. The name semimembranosus because certain part of it just seems to be very thin and it is like membrane. That's why the name is semimembranosus. Then comes the semitendinosus, the other one of this group, also originating from the same point at ischial tuberosity. Then insertion will be anteromedial surface of proximal tibia. Nerve supply same tibial nerve. Extension of hip, flexion of knee, internal rotation. So this particular muscle is basically seems to be just like a tendon. That's why the name is semitendinosus. Next comes the other one of the gemelli group, that is superior gemelli. Superior gemelli originate from ischial spine. Medial surface of greater trochanter is the insertion point. Nerve to obturator internus and helps in the external rotation of hip. And the last one of this group, that is hip and thigh musculature, will be the TFL, that is tensor fascial lata. It originates from anterior superior iliac spine and anterior portion of iliac crest, that is along with sartorius. Insertion will be on lateral condyle of tibia. Very important Gerdy's tubercle by iliotibial tract. Nerve supply will be superior gluteal nerve. Remember, this supply is common for the gluteus medius and minimus also. Action will be internal rotation of hip, abduction of hip, and stabilization of extended knee. So this particular part, what we have studied, is very important to remember. And how to remember? First of all, you try to make the tables of compartment wise. Then see what is common. Common means there will be a very common unique thing will be the nerve supply will be common. Normally the action is also common in thigh region. And next thing what you can find is the common point, like how many muscles are originating from ischial tuberosity, or how many are getting attached to the tibia, or how many are getting attached to the greater trochanter or lesser trochanter. So likewise, this big muscular compartment can be studied with ease. So thank you very much. Try to learn this point and make notes of it.